The next one I want to touch on is custom events. So custom behavioral events is what the prior name was. These have been around for quite a while. They never really got any shine or any updates until this year, essentially, and now they've really gained in functionality, use, and I really am trying to push people to use them more often for a lot of different things. So I'm going to take us through some example use cases of what you can do with these, but just a general upgrade or update on this. Used to be custom behavioral events, or CBEs was it for short. You might have heard that. Now it's just called custom events. Previously, these were only Marketing Hub Enterprise. Now any Enterprise Hub has them, which is really nice. You used to only be able to define 50 specific events. You can now do 500. And then you get 30 million event completions per month, which is a ton, obviously. And they have a new API in beta that I've played around with a bit, that is working quite well for a lot of this stuff. So that's kind of the background on these. To show what they look like, going to go over into a contact record. So I'm just on my contact record here. In the middle pane in our activities, obviously there's a ton of different stuff you can look at. One of the options is custom events. So this may or may not be on by default in some of your guys' portals, depending on how you have it set up. But custom events is one of the things that'll be tracked here. And you can see here, I have a custom event and it says I've completed the event, created asset in product. So you can define specific events that occur maybe in your product, or that your customer normally does, or touch points that you have with the customer. So really good use cases for like product onboarding. So say you have some sort of software product and you want to track what your user is doing and be able to send notifications or marketing emails based on things they're doing inside of your app. Custom events can fill that void really well now. So if we look at this custom event,
could an example be for let's say you're onboarding a new customer and there's 10 steps they need to complete before they go from let's call it free to paid user, and now maybe they get step number 2. This can trigger an email based on the custom event to send them an email based upon where they are in that journey to go through those 10 steps. And so I think this is super important for companies to realize that you can personalize communicate. I'm sure all of us have signed up for products or services, and you're like, wow, how did I get that email at the right time, knowing that I only filled out my first name but didn't put in my address? And now you can prod them and say, hey, you're getting so close, put in your address and this will be your next step. Which is just a really, really cool functionality of the system. And really the sky's the limit in terms of how you can leverage it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so this in and of itself, obviously super valuable if you could see how your contact has interacted with your product over time, right? Just from a sales rep perspective or a marketer's perspective of, all right, let me just look at not just emails we've sent back and forth, I can actually see what they've been doing in the app or whatever we're tracking through these events on the timeline. So just from that, a lot of value just to see that here. In terms of setup and kind of what we get, and one other thing to call out here is you do get to put custom like properties on your events as well. So I just have one called asset name, which is Reed's test asset. Reed's test asset. So I created an asset called this. I could put additional properties here of when I created it, or what type of asset it is, or any other metadata about the event. I can make custom properties for and include those, so you get not just they've completed the event, but all the supporting information for it as well. From a setup perspective, and let me refresh here. Yeah, it took a minute because it was changing my change my navigation around to the left side. But in the new and old, in reporting and data, there is a custom events section. So this is where you go to navigate to it. And this is where you create events. And from here, there's a couple things to note. So what I'm showing is sending them via the API. There is a way to actually, if you have your domain set up and connected to HubSpot, you can do what's called a codeless event. And if there's like buttons on your website, so there's let's say there's a contact us button on our website, we could actually build an event just by click this button that makes an event. And it basically records what you did, records where it was on your screen, and we'll start sending events for that. So if you have website specific things that you want to track, you can actually do this without needing code, which is what you used to need to do. You can use this visualizer to actually do this. I don't have any of these connected, but obviously if you're interested in learning more about this, we can dive deeper into this. But this one's actually really cool in terms of what you can do. You can also use code. So this was the kind of old way of custom events of
And Reed, can I pause you for a second on the visualizer? So could it be, for example, if they have a customer who keeps going back to a particular page, I know we can trigger off page same way, but if they go back to a particular page and they're trying to, let's say, look up a tutorial and they do it twice, maybe the first time we don't say anything, but the second time we send them something, can we trigger off of that? They click the button to look at that tutorial, and now we can trigger off of that moment.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, and these are like these are mostly used as like enhancers to the default HubSpot tracking code. So the HubSpot tracking code will track what page you go on, where you navigate to, the forms you fill out. This is like a step above of they click this specific thing on this specific page, trigger an event, gives you that flexibility. So it's like not a replacement or a different way to use the tracking code. It's like an enhancer. And yeah, so then we have a send via API option. This is what you would call your event. So we'll call it test webinar event or something. Give it a description, and then you can say what object you want to associate it to. So typical will be a contact, right? Like contact is doing the events, but you theoretically can do, if you're more account based, you could do a company based event or a deal based event or a ticket based event. So you get that flexibility there. And then you get where I was saying I had a property called asset name. We can now add text properties, timestamps, enumerations, numbers. We can add custom properties to this event. And we then get this this ID, which we can then use through the API to send events, or through a census to do this in a low code, no code way, for instance. So that's how you create an event.
For people who are unfamiliar with Census, we talked about at the top of the webinar, it's a reverse ETL tool that connects your warehouse to something like a HubSpot.
Yeah. And then kind of these in action is then this is new with the new version of events. You used to not really be able to do much with the event data. That was the big issue. Now we can do lists, we can do workflows, we can do basically all the HubSpot features we want based on events happening. So I have a workflow here that is triggered once they've created an asset in product. So that event that we saw my contact created initially over here, this contact would be triggered in this workflow via me finishing this event. And kind of to Noah's scenario, we can now say, all right, they created an asset in product. The next step of onboarding is for them to share that asset with another user. So we're going to wait. We're going to give this workflow 1 day to process. If they share an asset within the next day, we've met the criteria and we go down to the next onboarding step. If they haven't created or haven't shared an asset, all right, let's send them a marketing email or a transactional email of some sort saying, we see you created an asset, but you haven't shared it yet. Here's a tutorial on how to share it. And you can kind of continuously do this down the line of your onboarding flow. This is just one example of a use case for these but you can do workflows, but you can also do lists. So you could build a list of all your contacts that have completed all of your onboarding steps, or people that have logged in 10 times, or people that have created 100 assets because they have 100 events associated. So there's a lot of cool things you can do from just knowing what your users are doing and taking action on that data.